Hello and welcome to the National Gallery of the Cayman Islands Culture and Heritage Series, kindly sponsored by DART. In each video, you'll explore Caymanian culture and heritage and meet local artists who depict these themes in their work. In today's video, we'll be learning about mangroves. These incredible coastal trees are a crucial part of Cayman's ecosystem, acting as a sanctuary and nursery for local species and protecting the shoreline from erosion and storm surges. Let's hear more from Catherine Childs, Environmental Programs Manager at the National Trust for the Cayman Islands.
Mangroves are a type of tree that can grow in salt water. That's really difficult for plants to be able to pull off. If you went and brought a bucket of seawater home and watered your plants at home with ocean water, you'd kill them, right? Because most plants can't handle the salt. Mangroves are special because they can. So they have very interesting adaptations that allow them to live in that area. Most plants can't handle it. Now, it's interesting because we have 3 species of mangroves here. We have the red mangrove, which is the one that you've all seen with the great big red roots. We have black mangroves, which typically live right behind them, which are, they have sort of a black trunk and they have all those little things that come up out of the ground, little snorkel roots. And then we have white mangroves behind those, which are like more upland areas. And they're not related to each other at all, which is interesting because if you talk about oak trees, they're all cousins. But mangrove trees are not related. They're just, it's a kind of an artificial name that people have given them because they're a kind of plant that can grow in a salty environment. Most of the island of Grand Cayman was mangroves. And so this is where a lot of our wildlife requires having that as part of their life cycle, that ecosystem. Mangroves do a lot for people too, though. So that's where a lot of our fish species that we rely on commercially or for our tourism trade, right? Divers come to see these fish. So they'll spend part of their life cycle in the mangroves and then they'll move out to the coral reefs. We see that a lot with parrotfish, with barracuda, lots of species that require those mangroves to be there for part of their life cycle. If we didn't have them there, we would no longer see these fish in the numbers that we are used to today. They also help to create a lot of the rainfall that we have here. I think everybody's heard that the Amazon can create its own rainfall. Well, that happens here too. Our central mangrove wetland has so much evaporation going on all day long in the summer because it's hot, and that evaporation goes up and makes clouds, which are pushed by the prevailing winds to the western side of Grand Cayman, and more than 40% of the rainfall that we enjoy on the western side of Grand Cayman comes from those mangroves that are here. If we didn't have them, the west side of Grand Cayman, 7 Mile Beach, West Bay, Georgetown would look a lot more like East End. So very important for rainfall. It helps to protect us when storms come. It helps to keep our water clean and clear because those big roots hold that mud in place and keep it from being washed out to sea. So we have that beautiful blue water, in part because we have all these mangroves here. So they do so much for Cayman. The Cayman Islands wouldn't be what we know today, that we enjoy this beautiful place, without having our mangroves. We shouldn't take them for granted.
I joined the Mangrove Rangers in summer 2020, and I joined because I wanted to become a part of the voices in Cayman who stood up for better preserving our natural environment here in the Cayman Islands. I mean, we have people who come here to view our natural beauty, and it's a part of what makes us islands. We have to keep that. Something that stuck with me through the years I learned about mangroves as a ranger and as a child would be when Martin Keeley took us to the westerly ponds here, and he introduced red mangroves as walking trees. And I remember finding that so surprising because when you're little, you learn that trees root in the ground and they don't move. And he took us here and he showed us the roots as they reached out. And an added benefit that we learned later on is that as the mangrove roots keep reaching, they trap sand and sediment, which helps to build up the land around them, which I think is very important here with climate change.
Mangroves are very important from a climate change perspective. They're one of the best ecosystems in the entire world from this point of view because every plant pulls down carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere through photosynthesis. So plants make their energy from the sun. They bring in carbon dioxide and they put out oxygen, right? So that carbon and dioxide, the carbon is staying in the plant, and that goes to build the plant. It goes down into the soil as well. So every tree is doing that, but what makes mangroves special is all of those dead leaves that fall down, all of the roots that are decaying, all ends up in the soil, and that gets packed year after year after year underneath that tree, and it can be 20 feet of mud underneath the mangrove, and that's all carbon that's stored away forever that isn't going into the atmosphere to make climate change worse. And unfortunately, what happens is that when we develop mangroves, we have to make the soil stable. They can't build right on top of that mud. They have to mix it up with sand to make it stable so they can build things on top of it. But as soon as you turn that soil over and you expose it to oxygen, all of those carbon molecules become oxidized and they go back up into the atmosphere. So both you take out the trees that are pulling the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere every day, but you also put up all of that carbon that has been stored there for centuries, sometimes thousands of years, back up into the atmosphere in one big pulse. So it's so important that we protect our mangroves if we want to slow down climate change. And plus, they really help us to be prepared for the effects that we know we're going to see from climate change. So bigger, stronger storms. Mangroves are here to protect us from those. Droughts. All of that evapotranspiration that happens from the mangroves that creates rain, that'll help to stabilize our rainfall patterns. More flooding events. It's crazy that we have droughts and more flooding happening with climate change, but that's what is expected. All those flooding events, mangroves are famous for being sponges. They just soak up all of that extra water and keep it from flooding our neighborhoods. So many reasons why we need to keep mangroves around from a climate change point of view.
We're hoping that the public can be more involved in protecting our mangrove ecosystems by becoming more aware of the benefits that they have for us and our coral reefs and seagrasses. We hope that anyone who's lucky enough to have mangroves in their yard will review the proper trimming guides so that they can get the full benefit of their beauty and their protection. We're hoping that more Caymanian voices will be heard because excuse that politics use here often is that not much can be done for us because no one has said anything about it, and we're hoping to change that. So Cayman does need your voices.
Mangrove wetlands are a key ecosystem that have many essential functions, from supporting the life cycles of local species to creating rainfall and storing carbon. Understanding and protecting red, black, and white mangroves is crucial for plant, animal, and human life on our islands. Now let's hear from artist Chris Mann, whose fascination with these significant trees inspired a series of mangrove paintings.
So around the time I did this painting behind us, we'd kind of come out of Hurricane Ivan, and I was looking more at mangroves in life. I lived in a place where there were lots of mangroves growing around me, and I always enjoyed them. I thought they were very beautiful, and there was something tranquil about them. And at that time in South Sound, there used to be a few kind of tunnels cut into the mangroves where fishermen would park their wooden boats still then, at that time. And I thought it was a very sort of arresting sight, very pretty. And the way these tunnels or views through the mangroves generally would kind of frame the view and made it much more interesting, rather than if you just stand on the edge of the beach and look out to sea, you've just got this kind of linear kind of reality stretching away into the distance with the horizon, the sky above, the sea below, the edge of the beach. But the way the mangroves kind of framed the view you're looking at, I thought was very attractive. And I started to draw. And I liked the way that you could do drawings which were sort of naturally kind of curving lines, because that's the way your hand and arm leads when one draws. And so I was doing drawings based around mangroves, looking at them more closely, learning a bit more about them. In my painting, I was moving more towards a kind of simplification. I wanted to find ways of treating subject matter, but kind of paring it back to create motifs, to create shapes that could represent things and still be rich, I know, but they still have enough detail to be recognizable to people as being themselves, as being that thing. And of course the first ones I did, and the ones I've largely done, are red mangroves, and they're not the colour I paint them. They're a kind of brownish, rusty kind of colour, which I find sort of deeply attractive anyway, because I like those sort of colours. But I just decided to make them red. So I played around with different, hues of bright reds, like cadmium, red medium, and vermilion in some, and that kind of thing. So I wanted to draw people's attention to their beauty, and sort of by creating something that was a representation of mangroves that was colourful and did those things that I wanted the motifs to do, to frame the view, to frame the landscape, to focus attention on all the kind of minutiae of life that live beneath them. So when you're around mangroves, you look down and you see lots of things, but you see things in layers as well. You see the surface, the water, and that could be like choppy, or it could be incredibly limpid and sort of satin-like, very smooth. And there are degrees of transparency depending on things like the amount of leaf litter that might be underneath. So it can be quite stirred up, and it can be dark greens and browns, or it can be quite clear, and you're looking, like you do in a lagoon here at the nice sandy seafloor. And then you can see loads. You can see fish, swimming there. And if you sit quietly, you'll get birds come and land around you and that kind of thing. But hopefully we all know now, and there's a lot more interest in them as an important aspect of the environment, and because they're increasingly under threat. But people know about the value of them, the fact that they're a kind of nursery, a breeding ground for all of those things that we want to have and need to have in our waters here, for fishermen, for tourists, just for people to see and enjoy nature. We want to have a lively and healthy marine environment. That's incredibly important to Cayman. So I suppose that was, from the very beginning, it sort of came into my head as being a value in beyond my own interest in painting and drawing these things, but that gave a kind of value to focusing attention on mangroves, the importance of them for the environment, and their beauty.
As you've heard, Chris Mann has used his art practice to celebrate the beauty and share the environmental importance of Cayman's mangroves. Perhaps you too will find ways to admire, understand, and educate on these magnificent salt-resistant trees. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the National Gallery's Culture and Heritage series. If you'd like to learn more about mangroves, visit our website at nationalgallery.org.ky/learn for additional resources and learning materials. Thank you to DART for their sponsorship of this series, and to the National Trust for the Cayman Islands, Catherine Childs, Chris Mann, and Armada Films for their support of this episode.